Hey everybody, Alex from SeemsGoodMagic.com here, and we're joined by Sam Rubin, also regular contributor on Seems Good Magic. Sam, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. Happy to be
All
here.
right, feeling good, awesome.
Yeah.
You can find Sam's Twitch and YouTube. That'll be in the video description. Today, we're talking about something important: the future of Magic. Now, I think anybody who is as invested in Magic as me and Sam are always constantly going to be curious. What is the future of Magic? Magic is more than 20 years old now. And what is the current state of Magic? Is it in good shape? Is it in bad shape? What other, it formerly it had no TCG competition in terms of an online game that sells digital content, but times have changed. We have big competitors now, especially from probably the biggest heavy hitting company in the game company in the world in Blizzard. So this is a just a very confusing time in terms of, can Magic continue to grow and find success in this sort of ever changing, internet digital card game landscape. So we're going to talk about a few talking points, but that seems like a good jumping off point. Why don't we talk about Hearthstone versus Magic Online? And I know, Sam, you've recorded and you've talked about this at length, so why don't you
Yeah.
start it off? Why don't you talk about the difference in their communities, their sizes, and anything like that?
All right. So first, there's gonna the first thing I like to point out is that everybody wants to compare Hearthstone and Magic Online, and if you compare those two, it's obvious that Magic Online is losing. Hearthstone is something like 50 million users. They're making over $1 million per day, whereas Magic Online has tens of thousands of users and is making 20 or $30,000 a day. So that's really an issue, and it all comes down to like how easy the Hearthstone design, the interfaces to use, and the ease of the cards, and the way it's free to play. And Magic Online doesn't have those things, but a lot of the reasons they don't have those things are actually paper, like related to the actual paper game itself, where they want to have like paper cards be matched up with online cards, and so in order for that to happen, the online game has to be expensive. Now, where it gets interesting is that I don't know if Magic Online, without significant changes, could really compete with Hearthstone, just because of how intricate it is and how they like need to have people's collections be like worth money, apparently. So what I really like to compare it to is I like to compare it to Pokemon, actually, because Pokemon is a primarily paper TCG that also has an online component. And there, I think Magic is obviously beating them in the trading card game aspect and the real life paper aspect, but is losing still in the trading card game, like, or in the online trading card game scene. And Pokemon's product is free. So I think what we learned is we need an easy to use interface, and you need it to be free. You need people to like get their palate wet playing online and then purchase the stuff in real life. And yeah, it just seems like they're making wrong moves all over the place. I don't know how to help them.
And the problem is, it's not like they can transition at this point, though, right? Because they've seen, like, they get to look at Hearthstone. They're like, wait, Hearthstone's completely free. And like you said, they're making $1.2 million a day, which is insane in itself. That's
Right.
something, it seems so counterintuitive, but this is what we've seen happen with a lot of games. Hey, we're completely free. Come play us. And then it's like, well, do you want to grind a little bit, or do you just want to pay $20 and maybe make your experience that much more pleasurable? And that is just a seller to people. People love to be able to go directly into a game. Hey, I get to play this for free. I actually kind of like this game. This is fun. All right, you know what? I'm just going to spend $20. I'm going to get like 5 boosters. I'm just going to make myself have a better deck. Done. Now, what does Magic have? Magic is, they do let you play for free as well, right? But it's limited. It's limited deck. You're not actually gaining any currency. This is also starkly different from Hearthstone, where you can play for free and you can grind your way to the top, technically, in Hearthstone. Now, it would take a long time, but they allow you to do that. You're getting a currency. That currency can be spent on the arena, which is pretty almost exactly like the Magic Online drafts, or you can spend your money on boosters and stuff like that. So it really is just a completely different system, and it's clear that the Hearthstone free system is more successful, at least in terms of monetary success, right?
100%. And look, maybe as you said, they can't do that. But as I said in my video, in order for them to do that with something like Magic Digital Next, they have to blow up the system. And it might just involve them taking a $100,000 hit or a $300,000 hit, literally buying out every single Magic Online account so that no one can complain. But if you think you have even close to a $1 million a day ceiling, I imagine spending half a million of that buying out people's Magic Online accounts is not that big of a deal. So can they do it? Yes. Are they going to? I don't know. Is there a ceiling of, or is there like a issue of complexity like that we have to get over? Probably. But again, even if you look at like the Pokemon online TCG, it's free to play. They have in-app, purchases that you can buy. You can play it on your smartphone. Incredible, right? Like it seems like everyone's killing Magic, and I don't know why. Like they should be able to figure it out.
It's like they didn't update with the system. I think they must have just gotten comfortable with what they had, right? They're like, why would we change something that is costing us basically programmer fees, right? Or
Right.
server space, programmer fees. That's our overhead. There is no actual digital content. We don't need a printers. We don't need to print and mass produce across the world any sort of actual product. It's all digital. This is a good transition into the difference between customer expectations from Magic players versus customer expectations from Hearthstone players, from Pokemon players. Now, I think there is a actual big difference between customer expectations in these games because
Sure.
you have people that have been playing Magic for 20 years. They've been spending thousands, maybe tens of thousands of dollars. If I saw the number of the amount of money that I've spent in my life on Magic, I bet it would make my head spin. It would be unbelievable how many tens of
Yeah.
thousands I've spent probably in
Yeah.
my life. I could get a house in the same time. So I think Magic players' expectations, in my opinion, are higher for what they want from Magic because what they got from Magic is great, but they've put all this time in. And did you play during the time when they got rid of the DCI rewards? Do you remember that? I think it was like
No.
7 years ago, but it used to be
No.
they would send out in the mail, depending on how many FNMs you played, how many tournaments you played. You were building up your DCI. It was linked to your DCI, and it was how much you jammed, and that would be how much rewards you got. They just
Ah.
as soon I think it was. I don't exactly remember when. It was a couple years before Hasbro acquired it, I believe, or around that time. And they
Okay.
just axed rewards. They're like, we're just not going to send that stuff anymore. They had a replacement plan, but it rubbed a lot of players like me the wrong way. So what happens is, I think loyal customers that play the game and maybe were getting perks, it's very difficult for them to cut those perks without really rubbing people the wrong way. And I don't feel like Hearthstone has that problem, right? Because Hearthstone is just a few years old and they're already crushing it. They've lifted so many elements from Magic that they haven't had to go through the same mistakes that Magic has made. And I feel like this is really just bolstering them more. It's making people loyal to Hearthstone real quick, but it also doesn't really matter to Hearthstone that much if people are loyal or not, right? Because it's completely free, so brand new players can always be trickling in. But Magic can't have that. Brand new players can't just trickle into Magic. It's a very
Right.
complicated game, and if you want to, play any sort of competitive scene, it's expensive. So, do you want to maybe comment on customer expectations of Magic versus Hearthstone or Pokemon or anything like that?
Yeah, so I think the big differences, or the big deal in Magic right now with customer expectations, is that people look at Pokemon and they look at Hearthstone and they see that those people, the customers of those games, are getting treated fantastically well, incredibly well, right? These Hearthstone players that started out playing for free just 2 years ago and have just been playing are now getting like flown to Blizzard tournaments and are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, right? The very best Magic player in the world makes like $40,000 a year in tournament earnings or something. So there's one difference. But the main thing is that people feel like the people that make Magic the Gathering don't care about the customers, and I think that's the big issue, right? And you can't really argue that when your competitors offer like free to play products and you offer MTGO, which is just as expensive probably as paper, maybe 20% less, but basically just as expensive, and then you offer something different like Duels of the Planeswalkers. Someone getting into the game, like I know when I was trying to figure it out, I was like, okay, so I can play on Duels of the Planeswalkers, or I can play on Magic Online, or I can play on these like weird rogue servers that are not affiliated with the game. It's like I don't know. It doesn't feel like they care about us, like they're giving us the things that we want. So
That's true. It's confusing. Like, think how confusing Magic must be for anybody who's trying to approach the game, who may be interested in it. Like, they see a friend play it, and the friend's like, "Yeah, I think you'd love Magic, man. You play D&D, you play Skyrim. This is basically D&D in card form, and it's the originator. I think you'd really like it." And they're like, "Okay, what do I have to do?" Well, all you have to do is maybe buy this like pre-constructed deck, and that's only like $20. But then what do? Maybe they come to an F&M, and let's say their F&M is a little bit cutthroat, maybe a little competitive. They're going to get crushed. It's not like a pre-con is going to be crushing tier 1 constructed decks. And I know some F&Ms are more casual than the others, but I think it takes a certain level of devotion, especially early on, if you want to be if you want to get into the competitive scene, to really understand that maybe some of these tier 1 decks, they cost a few $100s for a reason, because they're the consistent winners. So I think I see that as an issue, because if you want this competitive scene to grow, and get the next generation of players, you're gonna have to make it where they don't have to spend $300 to come into a competitive scene. They don't. A lot of people just don't think that's a feasible option.
and it's not for a lot of people. And we should note, by the way, here quick, that it has been about 7 or 8 years since a recession in the U.S., so it is coming. And when the recession comes, people are really not going to want to spend $300 on a deck of Magic cards. Okay, so that's only getting worse here in a bit. But what I will say about that is, I walked over to my friends playing Pokemon during F&M the other day, or 4 days ago, and I was like, "Yo, how much does that deck cost?" Because it was like all shiny and foily and full out cards, and he was like, "Oh, like $60." And my mind just exploded. Another thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately is like the way in which a lot of these companies are working, right? Hearthstone is, and Pokemon, because we've been talking about them because they're like a similar competitor, have been working under the notion that you give, and then you kind of like ask. You're like, oh, you can play this game for free. We're gonna walk you through it, have a lot of fun. If you would like to upgrade, you can do so now. Whereas Magic Online is like very strictly pay to play, and that comes off as like abrasive and not warm and not inviting and not fun to do. So it's yeah, the way their whole system is set up is like not the way to go. I mean, just no debate. It should not be set up that way, and they have to change. And I don't know if they're going to, or if they want to even.
It's even it's almost like a dated, not just that. Not only does that feel dated, the whole Magic Online system, not only just the way the interface looks, but exactly like you said, how it's pay to play, how that feels abrasive. That just feels like basically like a game from 18 years ago, because that's what it is. It's a game that's more
100%.
than 15 years old. So it's got just these dated mechanisms like that. But even the game itself sometimes feels dated mechanically. Now, I know that's like a whole nother can of worms to open, but a lot of games have eliminated this land screw, land flood system that is essentially the RNG of the game, right? The randomness of the game comes from what was my distribution of lands and spells, and that is the big determining factor of Magic. Now you could argue, well, wait a second, it's not like Hearthstone doesn't have an RNG component. They absolutely do. There's no land screw, but you still have to see the right cards at the right time. But the difference to me is there is sort of, and I've talked about this forever because I've been recording videos forever and talking about it, because when you lose to land screw, it feels bad. It never feels like, well, I just lost to land screw. That's what you have to say to yourself to get through it. I just lost to land screw, no big deal, whatever, I'll move on. But when it's like a $15, or sometimes a $30 tournament, and you lose to I just drew one too many lands, or I just didn't draw enough lands, that to me feels different than in Hearthstone when it's I just didn't draw the card that had the lower cost that I could play at the right time. The feel bad difference to me is different. Do you have any experience? Do you have any input on that?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. What I will say about Hearthstone is that a lot of the cards have randomness on them. So they also build the randomness into the game via cards, but where it's like kill random creature with
Random
like three
creature or
attack or
pull
whatever.
random card from your deck? Yeah.
Exactly. So that is built in. But what I will say about Hearthstone is that the the win percentage you're able to achieve in Hearthstone is much larger than Magic. So there is theoretically less variance, or not theoretically, there is less variance. Well, no, theoretically, because it could just be that that the skill gap hasn't closed in Hearthstone yet, which is possible.
Okay.
But that's a theoretical discussion for another day. The real thing is that the best Hearthstone players in the world have like a 70 to 80% win percentage, and the best Magic players in the world have like a 65% win percentage. So there's obviously less variance in Hearthstone, and I feel like that helps the game and hurts the game. I feel like if people got to experience Magic in the same way they got to experience Hearthstone, they'd be okay with the land screw thing. I think one of the issues is, oh, I paid $300 for this deck, I paid $20 to enter this tournament, and I lost in 50 minutes because of something I couldn't control. I think that's a real issue. Um, and if people didn't have that issue, if people were playing for free, like I've never heard a single person complain about Screw or Flood on Duels of the Planeswalkers, you know?
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. I mean, the last major fix they've done for the variants, which I was hesitant about at first, but actually turned out to be great, was the scry rule, right? When you mulligan, you get the
Fantastic.
scry one, and it's great. You're right. So maybe this problem is a little bit mendable. I wonder if that's statistically significantly affected the variance of the game by adding that. Do you think it did?
Oh, I mean, so I just took a quick glance over like or some results that I have access to, and games on the play and draw when I mulligan to six, like my win percentage increased by a significant like 3 to 5% or something, just
Yeah.
like a very tangible amount just from this like one little you can put a card on the top or the bottom rule. So I imagine it's like that across the board for a lot of people. It's very significant.
And what's funny is, I don't know if you remember this, but the original sort of hesitancy or complaints about it that people were worried about was that it would actually benefit the aggro decks more than the control and the mid range decks. And I think the idea was uh, aggro just needed a certain, the types of combinations of cards that aggro needed were less intense than the combination of cards that a control deck and a mid-range deck needs, right? Like a mid-range deck maybe needs ramp cards with big fat finisher, or a control deck needs cheap removal plus card advantage. But what does an aggro deck need? An aggro deck just needs to throw. I just need to throw damage at your face, right? That's all I got to do. I got to throw as much damage at your face as possible. So I think the idea was that aggro decks would benefit more from this, but I don't know if you've noticed. I haven't noticed that at all. Have you?
I think no. I was just about to say before you even finished that like I think everyone benefits from this. I just think it's a very solid rule change. It's a good one. Yeah, I like it.
I liked it too. So maybe they can fix variance even more, because that was sort of a novel approach to a fix that I'd never thought of before, that really did pay off
Mhm.
really well. I mean, they still changed the rules of the game, which is crazy too. If you think about it, isn't it funny to think how different the rules of Magic were when the game first came out versus how they are now, right? With whole blocking order and while damage is on the stack sort of thing. So there's been all sorts of, they don't seem significant now because they've been gone for so long, but these were at the time major major game changes. I remember going to the first F&M where it was, oh yeah, damage is not on the stack anymore, just to let you know. And
Right.
it was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what? But that's how I've played the game my whole life.
Yeah.
So
Morphling no longer playable. Sorry.
yeah, it honestly did. Not only it made some cards straight up unplayable, or even the mana left in your pool dealing mana burn. Like
Mhm.
the elimination of mana burn was an enormous change to the game. It made cards like Suchi go from this card's not very good to wait, this card's like ridiculously powerful. That's like a 4 mana 4/4, and when it dies, you get 4 colorless mana.
Right.
So at the time, it was like, oh, I get mana burn for 4, but now it's like, wait a second, I have a terribly efficient creature that now ramps me huge too when it dies. So it really did change some of those cards. But all right, so we're at 21 minutes. Why don't we just get in the final points here, which is going to be the pros of Magic the Gathering and cons of Magic the Gathering. So a couple, I'll just list off a couple of the pros I came up with. It was really the innovator. It's the first trading card game, as far as I know. The information I see, it is the originator of the trading card game. It is the amazing combination of Dungeons and Dragons and poker, in the sense that you're playing cards like poker. There's skill, there's luck, but there's no dice rolling. I mean, maybe there's a
Right.
little bit with some of the cards, but you don't have to sit there and roll dice. It's determined solely by just the variance in the cards. So those were the two sort of major pros I had. Maybe you have some more pros of Magic.
Yeah, I mean that it. I mean, you have to say that the fact that you can play it with people in person is a huge pro.
No. Paper
Huge,
Magic.
yeah, huge advantage to the game. I think that and the mana system are what is going to put it over the top. If it ever climbs the ranks again and gets over, Hearthstone and over all these games, I think the fact that it has a mana system and the fact that you can play it in person is what's going to do it. So,
Okay.
that's what I'd say.
So now we'll just briefly touch on the cons of Magic. I'm sure we've already kind of covered a few of these, but the monetary, the monetary aspect of it, the complexity, these are huge barriers of entry, and we know this for a fact. And the problems, we didn't touch on this, but I always find this interesting. The problems of nerfing and fixing broken cards or combinations of cards, um, because like you said, one of the pros, the fact that it has a paper game, that comes with a con too, though. If they happen to print accidentally some sort of broken combination of cards or a broken card by itself, the difficulty in nerfing it, or in some cases, I mean, nowadays they just have to ban it. That is an enormous feel bad. Like when they banned Smuggler's Copter,
I
a
was I
lot
was
of
just gonna say I have five of them right here, but yeah,
yeah, not only does
it's
it tank
absurd.
the cost, but a lot of people feel bad. If you spent $20 on a Smuggler's Copter and then $80 for whatever your play set, and then the next day they're like, oh yeah, you can't play it in tournaments anymore. How much of a feel bad is that? That's a horrible feeling.
Ugh, yeah.
So that's a crushing feeling. And honestly, Hearthstone does not suffer this problem. They made a broken card. Oh, okay. 2 seconds later, all right, we've changed this card. It doesn't do this anymore. Done. And maybe you argue, but I spent a bunch of the dust, which is part of their currency system for making cards. They give you full dust refund on cards they've nerfed. So they even eliminated the feel bad aspect of I spend all this dust, I get this. No, you get all your dust back. Don't worry about it. It was on us. We fixed it. So maybe you want to make some comments on that, but that's a big problem with having a paper and a digital system is fixing cards.
And I don't think it's a big. Well, I should say that they've made it a big issue. I don't think it should be a big issue. If you looked at when the bannings came out, and even Modern Masters coming out, it got more popular. But when the bannings came out, there were a few game stores. I believe Willie Adel's game store in Brazil, if that's how you pronounce his name correctly, was buying all the Smuggler's Copters, Emrakul's, and Reflector Mages. So if you had bought in something from him that was one of those cards, or if you just had them, you could sell them to the store and they would give you a full refund. Now, I don't know where they came up with the budget to do that,
Yeah.
but it is possible. Channel Fireball is giving you a full refund on any card you've bought in the last like 60 days that gets reprinted in Modern Masters 3. So it's obviously a decent business model if Channel Fireball picked it up, right? Like the it's something that can happen, just they're not doing it.
I guess that's true. I actually didn't know that some sites or stores were doing that. That is actually that's. I mean, they didn't have to either, though. But that's if that's
There's
a
no mandate. Wizards has no history of doing this. They didn't. They simply just said, we're going to get all the customers by doing this. Everyone's going to praise us on the internet. It's the right thing to do. We're going to lose a little money in the short run, but make money in the long run. Let's do it. And Magic doesn't seem to be doing those like lose money in the short run, make money in the run type things. I mean, they just announced Magic Digital Next is going to be making money in like quarter 4 of this year. It does not exist yet.
yeah.
Like they're
That's crazy
obviously
to
just
me.
out there for the money grab, and I really think they have to take a different approach.
And if you want to know more about that, Sam did produce a video for Seems Good Magic, so you can see he kind of gives his best explanation of what is it, Magic Digital Next
Yeah,
is going to be all about. So that should
gonna
wrap
make
it
us
up. Thanks
rich.
so much for tuning in today, folks. We could talk for hours about this because we're invested Magic players, so we
Yeah.
want the future of Magic to be safe. We want our game to be secure. But I mean, the truth is, Magic never really is going to just straight up disappear. I don't see how that's possible, at least as long as our generation is alive, because our generation is really at least my age bracket. Sam, you might be just a little bit younger than that range, but it does seem like the 28 to maybe 34-year-old players were just like right at the right age where when Magic came out, they got into it, they got invested, and they've spent, maybe 20 years, in my case, 20 years just playing this game. So I think even if they had like a player base of 10,000 players uh, online, they would still keep that online. 10,000 players would be enough for them to buy the server space and probably continue to come up with cards, even if the cards were, less. Even if the R&D's budget was significantly less, they'd still be able to produce new sets and stuff like that. So I really don't think that Magic's ever going to disappear. I just think at worst it's probably going to fade down to uh, something that's like, wait, you play Magic, that 50-year-old card game or whatever? It's like, yeah, I play that. So I really don't think Magic's going to disappear ever, but the future of it is it's in a weird space because, like we said in this video, there's some dated mechanisms, there's some aspects of it that make the loyal player feel bad, especially now that, like you said, they compare it to stuff like Hearthstone or the Pokemon digital card game. So there are some concerns, but are you as hopeful as I am that they can at least address these and maybe, fix them in the future?
Yeah. So two things to look for if you're a positive, optimistic person. One, Magic has like some of the smartest people in the world working for them. That's just not debatable. Some of the smartest people in the world. Do these other games also have very smart people? Of course, but it's not that they're at a competitive advantage, Magic, but at least they can figure it out. And two, as I mentioned a little earlier, I believe, and I know this is like sad for Americans, but it's good for Magic. There is a recession coming in America in the next few years, most likely. And Magic definitely took advantage of the last one because out of the recession, when the economy boomed, a lot of that's when we saw the big rise in Magic players, like in the Theros, Dragon's Maze, Innistrad era. And so there's a big opportunity for them to take advantage out of that boom, right? When people like start spending money again, when people are getting into things again, when they're happy again, like there's going to be a time in the next few years for Magic really to make another big push, and I just hope they capitalize on it.
I do too, Sam. I mean, this is sort of the frontier that we've invested our time in now on YouTube. So we
Yeah,
definitely want this game to succeed, and and I've heard you say this too, and I say this all the time. Magic to me really is the greatest game ever crafted. It's spawned. I mean, it's surely debatable at the very least. I would be happy to debate people on why Magic is, in my opinion, the greatest game ever crafted. But I think a lot of people would agree with that statement. It's like, yeah, I really do. I mean, there's no other game that I've put thousands of hours in. There's games I've put hundreds of hours in, but Magic truly is the only game I've put thousands of hours of my life into
Right.
and have not gotten burned out on it. Maybe I've gotten burned out on a format, but when you have an ever growing game, you just wait till the next format and maybe you'll like that one, or go into Pauper, or go into Modern, or go into Legacy, go into Vintage, go into, there's so many different, go into Commander. There's everything. It really does suit every single type of player. So that really is something still unique about Magic. I don't think Hearthstone has 35 or whatever different types of playable formats. They're
Right.
probably trying to grow into that, but that is something that Magic still pretty much has a monopoly on.
Yeah, it definitely has a monopoly on play experience, which is huge. What I will say, though, in regards to that, is that sometimes simplicity is best. So, what I mean by that is in the Hearthstone world, you could probably, if you made Magic Online Hearthstone, like a similar product, you could probably only have standard and draft for a while. Maybe at some point you have to come up with a third format, but if standard is changing, you could probably have it. The reason why we have to have Legacy and Modern is because we're also a collectible card game, right? People have these cards and they want to play with them. They don't want them to just sit in their attic and collect dust. So I don't know if that's an advantage or a disadvantage. You seem to think it's an advantage. I don't really play formats outside of draft and standards, so
I don't either, so
yeah,
it's
so
kind of funny, yeah.
I don't experience it. But what I will say is it's probably a lot harder to make Magic Online good if you also have to program like opalescence and
Oh, you're right.
Metastopheles of the Chain Veil or whatever those weird old cards are. Like,
Old cards. That's a good
yeah.
point.
So
And they occasionally do have bugs. All right, we've talked for 32 minutes. This has been a great conversation. Maybe we'll come back and do another one if people. Feel free to leave a comment if you felt like we're overlooking some aspect, because I'm always interested in stuff like this, like the
maybe we
future of
should do a
Magic.
podcast.
Yeah, maybe a weekly podcast if people are into it. I tried that for about a year, but if we have some good talking points, maybe that is a future endeavor. But yeah, feel free to please leave comments and let us know if you feel like we missed something. I'd be happy to arrange something with Sam again, and we can talk about more stuff related to Magic and this sort of ever-changing, internet digital card game arena that it is competing in this day and age. So thanks so much for tuning in, folks. Once again, check out Sam's Twitch and YouTube page. You can find the link in the description. And check him out every Wednesday and Thursday on SeemsGoodMagic.com. So thanks so much, folks. Thanks, Sam. We'll see you all later.